Is there anything that most people don't know about being a gamer that you think they should?
What people don't know about
Anything people don't know about being a gamer that you think they should know?
We're normal people.
I'm inside actually. Let's go through window, Spice. Let's drop down. Okay. Yeah.
We're normal people.
Normal people?
That's huge. It's just like people think we're like geeks and stuff, but I mean, and we're also antisocial.
Yeah.
But a lot of us are pretty social, and in real life we have different lives. I mean, gaming isn't our entire life.
Yeah.
But it's a part of it, and it's cool. Don't stop
believing.
I think that one thing that most people probably don't know is that there's kind of like, it's not all just kind of like one general thing, but there's lots of different stuff to it. Cause like, for example, I've got friends who are like really into like strategy games, and they like talk about strategy games and strategies and play them. But like, I, for example, I'm into things like level design and like 3D modeling and like more kind of the creative and art aspect of things sometimes. So
Cool.
there's a lot of different stuff, because you can find people like into like coding and like the technical parts of games. Some people just like play games and don't really know things about like what goes behind them, and tons and tons of different stuff.
So you think there's more like subcultures within gaming and different ways to approach gaming than people acknowledge? Or?
Yep.
So do you think that there are big differences, or that mostly there are a lot of similarities between esports and gaming culture and the culture surrounding physical sports like soccer and football?
I think they're both extremely competitive. And I think that actually, I guess I think some people don't realize how competitive they can be. And I think it's interesting that there's such a maybe some people don't realize that there is such a strong kind of like organized culture and like major league gaming and stuff like that, like paid gaming. But I also think that a big part of physical sport is the camaraderie and like the the teamwork and the growing bonds. And I think that in a lot of cases with gaming, you don't really have that, because a lot of times you don't necessarily live near or know the people on your team.
Yeah.
I think they, like, if you're on a soccer team and you're playing a soccer game, you're probably going to treat it the same way. That's my point of view. But then sometimes people are very clever and they're like, oh, this is a game, I can do all of this crap that I can't do in real life.
In Japan, they have like those StarCraft tournaments that go on in the stadiums. Where people
Korea too. They're like
Korea, and I found that really fascinating. I mean, that's the idea of that is so foreign to me.
Like in your interview, did you talk about the best pro gamer ever in existence ever? Jaedong, the Korean StarCraft player?
No.
That he's the best.
But I think it is more and more becoming recognized as a real sport.
I mean, it's such a huge industry now, and like, the sport of it is becoming really popular.
And it certainly does take talent.
If you've ever seen professional StarCraft,
they're incredibly coordinated.
It's,
and fast.
like it's about actions per minute, and so they like move their fingers like lightning fast and things like that. And so even though that's not in every game, like Team Fortress 2, for example, has skill-based movement as part of it, because there's like rocket jumping and sticky jumping, and so being able to move your fingers and like move your mouse in certain ways and do certain movements in like particular amounts of time, that can be a part of it. So there's still a small physical aspect, even though that's not what like determines whether you're good or not. And then there's also strategy is a huge part of it. And so I fenced for a very long time. I still kind of do. And so strategy in fencing is like a huge part, since in fencing there's the physical part, and then there's also like a whole mind game going on. So having the huge like metagame aspect in gaming is kind of a similarity, just it's a bigger part than in a physical sport, since it's kind of all about strategy and how you execute it. I think another really big difference is that you can just kind of play a game anywhere and like pick it up, and there's a lot more people that you kind of have access to because it's over the internet. So like I couldn't just like go outside and be like, hey, let's fence.
Does being anonymous and far away change the way that people interact? And do you think gaming culture is tied heavily into internet culture in general?
Yes. I think that it definitely allows people to inhabit personas that they would like to, which isn't necessarily a bad thing at all. There's a part of that that goes into reading or watching movies. It's definitely not, in most cases, I don't think it's a bad thing at all or something to beat yourself up about at all. I think that's something, I think that's a totally normal and human desire that everyone accomplishes in some way.
And sometimes people have split lives too, which is fun.
They have their online friends and their IRL friends.
Yeah, that and like they have personality differences.
Yeah.
Like someone can be really quiet online, whereas a person is like super outgoing and energetic in real life. That's interesting. You really get that when you're talking to someone on Skype.
I think that being anonymous and far away actually does kind of change some stuff up because when I think one good example is probably making rosters, because when I'm like, if I have to work on a team roster, it's a lot easier to tell someone no or say like, there's someone that we like better than you when you're not actually like face to face with the person. So that's just kind of a small example. But there's also, it might be kind of, it depends on the person, but it could be easier or harder to kind of talk to a new team at first when you're anonymous and far away from someone. Because in real life, if you get introduced to people on a sports team, then you kind of have to hit it off, or you kind of have to like, because you're going to be with the people for the whole season, like you're going to have to know them, get to know them. Online, you can kind of not really love everyone because you're just kind of like playing the games with them and you don't really know them like outside of that. So I think it does make a difference, yeah.
Do you think that the fact that people are far away and anonymous changes the way that people interact?
Yes.
And do you think that gaming culture is tied heavily to internet culture in general?
I think it definitely changes the way people interact. Like you said, it's easier to say things to people when they're not sitting in front of you.
Yeah.
I think people end up being a lot more immature and
That
racist.
certainly ties into trolling and stuff as well.
A lot of racism, a lot of sexism, just a lot of general rudeness and shittiness.
So what are your thoughts on trolling in games and acts like teabagging?
Well, I think I'll talk about them separately. I think trolling in games is something, like, I think when you're playing at a competitive level, you usually don't see trolling much, but you can see some kind of like silly things happen sometimes. But if you're trolling, I think it's still just for fun. Like if you do things just for fun, you don't try and do anything that's like seriously trying to harm someone or like do something bad, then it's not very nice if you do that. But like trolling in public games, I think is fine usually. Like my friends over the summer, we played a lot of Dota, so we'd do things like we'd change all of our pictures on Steam to the same thing, and then we'd like change all of our names like a combination of I's and L's, so it doesn't look any different. So you couldn't tell like who was who and when who killed who and stuff like that. And so that was fun. And so I think doing silly things like that is always kind of fun. Cause kind of like some people get like really serious about games, get like all ragey and get mad at stuff. So it's kind of nice to do silly things that like reminds people that's just for fun.
What are your thoughts on trolling in games and acts like teabagging?
I think people need to grow up. I never do that, but then again, I think I'm older than the average gamer on like Call of Duty. And I don't know. I think it's stupid. I mean, like a waste of time and energy, and I've seen people get really upset.
Yeah, people do that a lot less in fencing. But they're like on my fencing team, we have done things like that. Like we do trolly things, and like we had in fencing, like after a point, a lot of times people will yell and stuff. So there's one guy on my team once who after every point would yell like Little John, and so that was pretty fun. And I think stuff like teabagging I think that's kind of silly. Like, there's no point in doing that. Like, in TF2, I guess the equivalent of teabagging would be like, you can in the this kind of goes into more technical stuff, but like in the engine that TF2 runs on, you can like make binds, which is like telling the engine to do things that you could probably do anyway. So then a really common way to use binds is to do chat binds, and so instead of like hitting like the chat key and then typing something in and then hitting enter, you just hit a bind and it does the phrase for you.
Okay.
So something that people will do is like make binds, then pop them at certain times. So like an example is like last week. This is kind of a trolly thing. For example, like me and my team were scrimming another team, and there was the person playing medic on the other team is. Do you know the comic Party Cat? Have you heard of it? Well, his picture on Steam was of the cat from Party Cat, and so I was like, okay guys, make a bind that says it's party time, and then every time we kill him, just pop that bind. And so we did that. So that's kind of, I guess, kind of like teabagging, kind of like trolling in TF2, so yeah.
In a soccer game, like someone
Right.
would like squat down on someone's face.
Well, I remember when I was maybe 12 or 13 and I would play Halo.
Yeah.
I was specifically that game. I remember people would do that. I think it's no different than what like adolescents do or older people do just on the game console, and it's just more overt, obviously, because it's in the same way that people who go on like Omegle are really direct when they're making sexual come-ons. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It
So
becomes more direct when there's a less face-to-face connection.